back in the day, I think, again, going back to the times of Prohibition, right? So when that person went to go buy that rum, they'd come on in. They'd walk in, and there was a poker table. There were prostitutes. These are horses that run together. I don't know if one causes the other, but the association is what we're talking about. So you go to your deal.
Prostitutes and horses?
No, prostitutes.
Where did you
and
go?
Gambling.
Where were you that you saw prostitutes and horses?
No.
Were the prostitutes on the horses? Was this a racetrack?
No, you're joking.
Where were you?
I'm talking about in times of Prohibition.
I was fading. I'm sorry. I'm not in the. I'm not in the moment. I got to get back into the.
That's
moment.
okay. That's okay. I'm talking about in the times of Prohibition. Yeah. You know, did alcohol cause gambling? Did alcohol cause people to go to prostitutes? No, these are horses that ran together. That's my point. So you went to go get one thing, and the other things were there.
Were prostitutes on the horses drinking at the same time?
No, I'm talking about the idea of one causing the other. This idea of gateway.
Did they have 2 drinks in both hands?
I don't know.
Not holding onto the horse? Jon Levine here with Dr. Raj Juneja, MD, triple board certified in adult psychiatry and addiction medicine. Dr. Juneja, prior to entering medical school, underwent graduate training in neurosciences at Northwestern University. And after earning his medical degree at St. George's University School of Medicine, Dr. Juneja completed his psychiatric training in New York City at St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital Center, where he was chief resident. He also completed a fellowship in psychoanalysis at New York University and is a graduate of the University of Arizona after studying integrative and alternative medicine under Dr. Andrew Weil.
Yes, sir.
And how are you today, my man?
I'm doing fantastic.
Dr. Raj.
Good as I can be.
Yeah, good to see you again. We had a very interesting conversation at a party.
Yes.
About a month ago.
Blue zones.
Blue zones. We were talking about all sorts of things. And then I realized, I'm like, this is the guy I need in my podcast show.
I appreciate it.
Because it was venturing into very interesting territory about addiction, which is you deal with major addictions. What kinds of addictions do you deal with?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing, of course, we're dealing with right now is the major epidemic happening in the country. We are 5% of the world's population in the United States, and we consume 80% of the world's opiates. About 72,000 people died last year. So that is a major problem.
72,000?
Yes. In fact, life expectancy in the United States has gone down the last 2 years in a row because of this epidemic. That's how many people have died. Then over the next 10 years, it's expected over 500,000 people are going to die. And my number one professional task is to get that number low as possible.
Why are people using opioids?
It's anesthesia. It's anesthesia. In fact, we are a society, actually, at least these are some of my current thoughts. And in fact, I've been thinking about this in the last couple of weeks, in which I think often we believe that we should have no pain. Think about it when you're a kid. You idealize the rock stars, you idealize the film stars, etc., right? They got it all.
Right.
You think, oh, this person has it all. That person has it all. Look at that house they live in, right? And I'm sure you and I both personally know plenty of wealthy people that are not very happy at home.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
In that scenario. So it shows you money doesn't buy happiness. But with that, I will tell you one caveat. Up to about $75,000 annual salary, people will continue to rate their happiness higher, higher, and higher. About 75, 95, it flattens out.
If you give me money right now, I'll be happier.
You know.
Do you have any money you can give me to make
You know
me
what the problem will be? It'll only be temporary. After a little while, it'll fade off.
Okay.
It will not lead to sustained happiness.
So something's going on. There's a root, there's some stress, whatever it is, some underlying problem that these people have, and they're trying to cover it up. A Band-Aid approach with the opioid.
Absolutely. Now, it's our past is really what we're talking about. It's our past. Let me give you a quick example. So I was at a birthday party a few weeks ago, and at this birthday party, there were party favors, right? Now, some kids got the big stuff. Some kids got the, middle stuff. Some kids came up empty-handed. You should have seen how invalidated these young children felt. My heart actually was I was disturbed watching what
Is
was
that traumatic to them?
You know what's traumatic is the conclusion they're reaching is that I am no one. I'm not worthy because I didn't get something. Oh, you're more worthy because you got that. So it's become a very externally validating system, especially in the West here. Especially in the West. So people, no pain. We shouldn't have pain. So this is why, again, I think there's a lot of self-anesthesia that goes on. But the reality is, there's always pain. There's always something uncomfortable.
Sure.
I can tell you something I'm very happy about, moderately happy about, and very upset about all right now, if we go in those directions. These things exist simultaneously. They're not in silos.
You're happy about being on this show. What are you unhappy about?
What am I unhappy about? Wow, that's an interesting question. Well, I mean, that's a very good question.
And what do you do if you're unhappy? Do you exercise?
Let me yes, I worked out yesterday morning. Let me give you this poem, and I think it might actually help us in this direction.
You got it.
The poem is by Nietzsche.
Nietzsche.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, actually, one of my colleagues sent this out on Tuesday, and I thought this was just absolutely beautiful because it says so much.
Okay. Sure.
Okay? For one thing is needful, that a human being attain his satisfaction with himself. Only then is a human being at all tolerable to behold. Whoever is dissatisfied with him or herself is always ready to revenge himself, therefore. I threw in the herself because obviously it's a bit dated.
Sure.
This applies to all of us. But if we look at that, what we're saying is when we're not satisfied, it's very easy to say, hey, honey, why didn't you do that?
And it's coming from...
Right. If I'm dissatisfied about something,
Right.
it's my responsibility to get into a place where I'm satisfied instead of saying it's your fault.
Right.
Right? So it becomes easy to project those things out. Now, what does satisfaction really mean?
So this is really an issue with oneself.
Yes.
So if I have an issue with a messy kitchen,
Yes.
and I get upset with my wife and I say, the kitchen's a mess. Why
Right.
is it always a mess?
Right.
You're saying to me that this is something that's coming from me?
That's correct. If
I
you're dissatisfied,
didn't make the kitchen a mess.
I'm with you there.
What the hell? What did I do?
I used to go through this myself not too long ago. This
well-
idea of why isn't the kitchen cleaner, or why is it messy? But the idea is if I'm dissatisfied, whose responsibility is it to get satisfied? It's mine.
How do I get satisfied?
Well, there's a variety of ways, right?
Yeah.
We can either clean the kitchen, hire somebody to clean that kitchen, or accept the way it is.
I think just accept.
Accept, because see, when we tell somebody you're not doing it right, essentially we're saying, listen, you're broken somehow. Now, it doesn't mean we can't improve. It doesn't mean we can't support each other. But to say, why isn't it this way, in more of a blaming sense, rather than, honey, I'd really like the kitchen to be a certain way. How can we make this happen?
That's a better way of doing it.
Well, it works a heck of a lot better, right?
Yeah, then otherwise people get defensive.
That's absolutely right.
And then nothing changes.
Nothing changes. Now, there are certain scenarios in which the person may not be willing to do something, right?
Sure.
Or let's say somebody develops a gambling habit, just as a random thought. Now you can say, you know what, that bothers me. It's very dissatisfying to me. Right? Now there are certain scenarios, if that is not going to be able to be...
My teams won last night, by the way.
Did they?
They did, so I'm feeling pretty good about it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's, you have happy things and you have unhappy things, and, My teams won last night, so
I'm not sure exactly what that means though. When
the
you say your
the
team.
gambling.
Ah,
So I feel good right now.
you can see
You know.
actually. Right.
It's actually a complete joke.
I know.
I
got
actually
you,
don't
got
gamble. I did years ago, long time ago.
you. We got a big lottery tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I don't do the lottery. It was
I
sports.
know.
It was sports.
I'm with you. I'm
'Cause
with
I'm
you.
a sports guy.
Well, I'm
so-
gonna bring the model of the mind back to the lottery, which
But
it
that-
really works. I'll tell you about it in a minute.
Okay.
But the idea of getting satisfied with something that we are not satisfied with and that is not changing, what are you going to do? All you can do is move away from that dissatisfying experience.
It's there. The experience is there. You can't change it.
Well, you can't change anybody else. You can try. We've all tried. It doesn't work very well.
No, it doesn't.
It usually ends up in arguments and upheaval, right? So either we can accept that and tolerate that and get to a place of satisfaction. Now, satisfaction doesn't mean it's all good. It all feels good. This is the thing. Satisfaction says this is good enough. And if it doesn't become good enough, well, guess what? You have a choice. You have an option. Nobody's locked into anything.
Right.
I can't do this, I can't do that. No, that's not true. It's in our hands, individually in our hands.
So getting back to the opioids, what type of demographic are taking the opioids? Why is it opioids, and what's so special about opioids compared to the other drugs? I don't know, marijuana and alcohol. Why opioids?
I think one important thing to understand is there's one common reward pathway, right? There's one common reward pathway. Now, no matter which drug of abuse, illicit or non-illicit, alcohol, they all activate the same pathway. They all increase dopamine release in your brain, right? So dopamine makes you feel good. I'm having a sip of this coffee, get a little blip of dopamine. That tastes good.
Sure.
I say, wow, we're sitting here together. There's a little dopamine going, right? That feels good. It's a state of wellness, right?
Sure.
The brain is not or was not ever made to be flooded with it. It was for survival. It was to eat. It was to reproduce. It was to have a drive towards a purpose that made us feel good. Now, we have these very powerful stimulants. Methamphetamine is like also becoming a big problem.
So just have one cup of coffee and not 25 for you.
For me?
I'm just kidding with you.
I got you. I'm a slow one with jokes. I'll tell you that right now.
It's all good. Drink some more coffee.
I know I'm probably a little bit.
Drink some more
I think
coffee.
too much sometimes.
Raise your
friends,
dopamine.
some of my friends are like, "Are you like this all the time?" I'm like, "Man, this is just the way my mind."
No, you're
is."
perfect the way you are. Raise the dopamine levels. Okay, that's okay. So
But if you flood the brain with dopamine, and you're like, "Whoa, wow, I want some more of that," that is a problem. Now, some people genetically are more modified for that. So some people take an opiate, pain medication, and they're like, "Oh man, I felt nauseous. It was terrible." Other people take them, they're like, "Ting, I've arrived." Like, "Wow, I'm not anxious. I'm not shy. John, how are you?" They can step into a different place.
wow, so it's genetic.
Part of it,
Some of it.
definitely nature, but also nurture. You can take two identical twins. First degree parent has schizophrenia. One gets it, one doesn't. Why?
That's unbelievable.
That's right. Because it's the environment. Same home. Same home. So also stress. Right? This is why you see a lot of these young kids, and we're jumping over to, kind of psychosis here in a minute, but this is why we see young kids, they usually have their breaks when they go to college. It's when the pressure really comes on. See, we all have
What do you mean they're breaks?
psychotic breaks.
Psychotic breaks?
Yeah, kids that really unfortunately get sick in college. It's really sad when that happens.
Due to the stress?
Due to their genetic vulnerabilities and due to their stress and possibly drugs, right? Including marijuana.
So because of the stress, they reach for the drugs. What do you do? I mean, I guess the other options are do it in a healthy manner. I do it, to me, it's exercise. Exercise. How else would you do breathing?
You're talking about far as well. How else would you
Coping, like going to college and being in a stressful environment
Yes.
and having to do a lot of work and
Yes.
whatever, you have to do. Because I have 3 kids and I want to, this is a problem. This scares the hell out of
It's
me.
a huge problem.
It really scares the hell out of me.
Yes.
I never really got into drugs ever, so I don't really understand it.
Yes.
I understand how it works, but I was always preoccupied with sports, and I think that I didn't have the free time to get into that stuff. I don't know why. I just didn't get into it. But it scares the crap out of me. So I guess what I'm getting at is this. I want to know, what do I have to do to get my kids through high school and in college where they can manage their stress without reaching for this crap or whatever else it may be down the road? Because if it's not opioids, it's going to be something else. Right?
That's right.
It's going to be something else.
It can be other behavioral addictions. It can actually be food. It can be the computer.
Yeah.
It can be a variety of things that become addictive, ways to check out, basically, is what we're talking about.
To check out.
To check out. To not be present with reality and the forces and the stresses of life. You say, what can we do? I'll tell you the first thing that comes to mind. Columbia did a study in which they took family dinners. They said 0 to 2 family dinners in this group, 5 to 7 family dinners in this group. Didn't tell them what to talk about, just told them have these gatherings. You look at the column of the 5 to 7, unbelievably, much less rates of substance abuse.
Just having dinner together.
Just having dinner together,
Yeah.
5 to 7 times a week rather than 0 to 2. Now, again, listen, we're living in 2018. This is, 5 to 7 nights a week. How many people are even home by dinner time these days?
It's crazy.
Right? So my version of that is, have 2 dinners, have a lunch and 2 breakfasts. Get it in there.
It's not about dinner. It's about being with your kids and talking to them.
Exactly.
That's the whole point, right?
Johnny, what's going on? You know what, that kid Alfred? I don't know what. I got a little vibe. They know Dad's watching, Mom's watching. Somebody cares.
Somebody cares.
Somebody cares.
That's cool. Okay, so we learned something. That's great. So dinner, or just, if it's not just dinner, it's just being with your kids.
It's actually being present with your kids, not being home. The kids on the iPad on the couch.
Yes.
Dad's in the living room watching TV. Mom's doing her thing, et cetera, et cetera. That's that. Even though that's good.
Yep.
Everybody's home. That's good. But we're talking about interaction. We're talking about attachments. Because fundamentally, how we attach to people and what we believe about those attachments drives us. And this is really one of the, I think, fundamental things that really we should talk about, because dissatisfaction comes from where? It comes from our internal blueprints, right? One of the key things we have to remember, and this is really one of my missions to get this message out, is most of what's driving our behavior, John, is not what's consciously going on. That's all logical. Red light, I stop. I have an appointment here at 9:30 a.m. Here I am. It's all logical.
Right.
It's the illogical stuff that's hard to understand. Oh, I said I wasn't going to do that again, and here I am doing it. I said I wasn't going to yell about the kitchen again, but here I am doing it. Right?
Right.
Right?
Yep.
It's the illogical. So what happens? What's getting triggered? Something's getting triggered in that. Now, what's getting triggered? You have to go back to the blueprint. Now, what do I mean by that? Here, I can give you a personal example on this. So when we migrated from India, I was 5 years old. And my mother, you can imagine, actually our father wasn't with us. His paperwork had not come through yet. My mother, 3 kids, none of us spoke English. Not a single word. $13. Typical immigrant story, $13 in the dream.
Yeah.
And my sisters tell me later on, more adult life, oh yeah, Mom used to be upset. It was a hard transition for her. She left her brothers, her sisters. Her father had recently passed away. Her mother was still there.
Sure, my gosh.
You can imagine, right? And now we're moving from New Delhi, India to Rockford, Illinois.
Yeah.
In the winter, right? Very different.
Big transition.
Big transition. So Mom had a tough time with that initially, as you can imagine.
Right.
How emotionally available was she to me? Probably not. She knew I was safe, but she was going through her own process, right?
Sure.
So here I am, mom. That's not available in that extra emotional way that I had been used to.
Right.
So in my 20s, guess what? I start dating emotionally unavailable women. Very interesting, isn't it? It wasn't until
no coincidence.
Exactly my point.
This is in your mind. This is definitely no coincidence.
There's no question.
There's no question.
0% that this is not how the mind works.
We're getting into Freud type stuff right now.
We're getting into the unconscious. We're getting into understanding what Freud started, but the field has come a great way.
But that's unbelievable.
It's hard to believe.
And quite frankly, freaks me out a little bit because then I start thinking of my own stuff. So you're saying that your mom had a very hard time, and rightfully so, moving to Illinois from India, and she was a little bit unavailable, emotionally unavailable.
For a certain period of time.
For a certain period of time, right.
Right.
And understandably so, because that's tough.
Right.
Real tough, I can imagine.
You can imagine.
Tough. And then you kind of took that was the blueprint.
That became part of my blueprint.
That was the imprint or the blueprint into your brain. And then when you were 20...
In my 20s, when I started dating.
Right,
a little
right.
earlier than that. It wasn't until the third or fourth relationship where I thought, oh, she's the one. No, she... And then I said, no. By the third or fourth relationship, late 20s, I was like, something's going on here. I couldn't have been... I thought it was this. I thought it was... How could I keep being wrong? The unconscious is not logic-based, my friend. And this is what makes it so challenging to understand. It's illogical. Just like you're saying, it's unbelievable that we would be using these early childhood experiences to drive our choices today. It's unbelievable. But it is...
No, go on.
No. So it's not until we uncover what our unresolved past conflicts are.
Is your wife right now
Yes.
similar to your mother?
In some ways, yes, absolutely.
And that's no coincidence?
100% not.
My wife is similar to my mom. Not completely, but similar.
Not completely, but there are the strands are in there, 100%.
And you're freaking me out.
100%.
There's a reason.
But who we choose in our partner is really not just mom and not just dad. It's a combination.
Of mom and dad.
That's right. Here, I'll go out on the limb. You know what's coming to mind? I read Steve Jobs' biography recently. Now, I did not realize he was adopted.
Oh, I didn't know that either. He was a piece of work, that guy.
Soon as I read that he was adopted, and he referred to his biological mother and father as the egg donor and sperm donor, I really kind of started putting together why nothing was ever good enough. See, he internalized this. Now, this is a hypothesis. Obviously, I didn't know the man.
Sure.
But certainly, we can hypothesize that why was he so stringent and nothing was ever good enough? Because on some level, that's how he felt about himself. He was not satisfied, going back to the quote, with himself, so he's dissatisfied with everybody else. If we're not satisfied with ourselves, we become intolerable, and as I understand, he was quite intolerable.
He seemed to be very intolerable.
You want to talk about repetition? Listen to this. He's adopted, right?
Sure.
He has his first child, Lisa. He gives her up for adoption.
That's right.
It's unbelievable, if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. But
it is.
He followed his blueprint.
But how do you stop that pattern? How do you change the blueprint?
That's right.
So here's the thing. We have these issues. Everyone has issues. Everyone has pain, as you described.
Yes.
So the pain that you have in childhood, how do you retrain yourself to let that go, realize that it really happened, it's reality, but move on and accept it? How do you do it?
Depends on the depth of the trauma. So, we say there's big T trauma and little T trauma, right? Little T's add up, though. That's the thing.
What's a little T trauma to you?
Moving here from India. Little T trauma.
Little T. Okay.
Right? Big T trauma. Mother got killed in a car accident when the kid's buying birthday party favors.
That's big T trauma.
That's big T trauma.
So for little T trauma, what do you do?
So the question is, how do you approach this? Is really what you're asking me. Carl Jung said that if we don't make what's unconscious conscious, you'll live your life and call it fate. Let me say it again. If you don't make what's unconscious conscious, you will live your life and call it fate. It was my fate. No, it was not your fate. That was what you were conditioned to do or to believe based on your childhood.
Right.
And you're going to live that out now and recreate that and think this is my fate. No. You are not individuated, actually, until you go through this process and really be able to separate out in the map what's mine and what's not mine. Because often when we don't get that validation in early childhood, the love, ultimately,
Sure.
the attachment, a secure attachment, not an ambivalent attachment, right? But a secure attachment. If we don't get that, we start doubting who? Ourself. We start saying, oh, I'm not smart enough. Oh, I'm not good looking enough. I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough.
Speak for yourself. I'm just kidding with you.
I am speaking for myself.
I'm kidding with you.
No, I'm being serious. These were the realities early on that I dealt with.
Okay.
It wasn't until I understood their sources that I could overcome them and understand that these are parts of my past, but they weren't true. Now, saying that alone, inside alone, is not enough. That's another challenge. You can tell somebody this, but just hearing it isn't necessarily going to create that shift they're looking for.
So someone comes to you and they have this opioid addiction. There's obviously a trauma.
On some level, you could make a general statement like that.
Or
Well,
maybe-
because I think we're all traumatized on some level.
Okay.
Pain. We've all had pain. Who hasn't had pain? Anybody who says they haven't, please come on.
Oh my God. All the time.
Right?
Yeah.
You see now we're starting to talk, right? This idea of everything's good. Welcome to social media. I think we've amplified this by like 100,000 now in our country.
Why is that?
People only put up the good stuff.
Oh, in social media.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Nobody's sharing their pain, and actually what's going on in some of their homes.
Sure.
But they're putting up, wow, great vacation.
Right.
And they were just at the, talking about divorce 3 weeks earlier. Right?
I've also read and heard that even people who actually look at social media and look at the other people who have these great experiences, they feel worse.
That's right. This is exactly what I'm saying.
So that's bizarre.
It's idealization of the other and de-idealization of yourself. Remember, every time we idealize someone else, we are de-idealizing ourselves in some way. They have it better.
Right.
They have it better than I do. Maybe in some ways, not necessarily in others. And this is, this mixed experience that we have to get clearer with. My Eastern colleagues and European colleagues tell me, oh, they've had so much pain in terms of their history. He goes, oh, we don't get too far away from it. In fact, if you look at our history post-World War II, Canada above, Mexico below, we've been isolated in this country. And what happened in the 50s? It was happy days.
Happy days.
Leave it to Beaver. It was about, and really we were able to have these 20, 30, 40 years of development where everything seemed really on the up. But didn't mean pain didn't exist. People were just trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Huh. This is very, very, very interesting stuff that you're talking about. It's making me think a lot. What's the integrative? So you went to school for integrative medicine.
I did an integrative medicine fellowship as well.
So do you prescribe medicine, and how do you deal with, like, for opioid? I keep going back to opioids.
No problem.
Because it scares, quite frankly, it scares me.
It's killing our kids. It
scared-
should scare us.
Yeah, 'cause
it should scare anybody listening to this. You should be thinking about this for your kids, especially your teenagers.
Yes. So that's why I keep going back to this.
I'm with you.
Because it's kind of in my brain, and I'm like, it scares the crap out of me.
Yes.
So social media scares
Yes.
the crap out of me.
Yes.
Because I didn't grow up with it. And I actually don't really like it, quite frankly. The opioids or any drugs also scares the crap out of me.
Right.
when you see people who have these addictions, do you give them medication to get off of the opioids, or what's the integrative
Piece in
because
this.
I'm holistic, right?
Yeah.
So what's the integrative approach that you take?
Okay, so in terms of, let's take one step back. What is integrative medicine? Right? Integrative medicine says, listen, we have allopathic medicine from the West, which is mainly biology focused. But let's not forget about herbs and nutrition. Let's not forget about meditation and mindfulness. Let's not forget about turmeric, anti-inflammatory. Let's not forget about fish oils that are anti-inflammatory.
Sure.
Let's not forget about exercise. Let's not forget about psychology and what's happening at home and how that's impacting it.
Let's use all the tools at our disposal.
That's correct.
And see what works.
That's correct.
Because maybe a little west, maybe a little east.
Bring it together.
Bring it together.
That's right.
What works?
That's right. Now, so some people I have on psychopharmacological medications, along with maybe oral lavender, actually lavender pills.
So you will combine that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Or 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, MTHF.
Yes.
Right? Now, activated folate, we all activate folate differently in our bodies. But about a third of the population are slow activators. If you're a slow activator of folate, vitamin B9, you are predisposed to having anxiety and depression because neurotransmitters require that activated state for them to form. So what do? We give them the activated form, not the one that's in most vitamins, which, by the way,
Well, what do you mean? There's an activated form and there's an inactivated form?
that's right. Most of the vitamins that people buy, if they're real in the first place, which we can get back to in a
That's a
second,
whole, yeah.
because New York State, Attorney General office, they pulled products from 4 major retailers. I'll just say that. If you look that up, you'll find the article.
Wow.
Did tests, most of the products, houseplants, oregano, and you're thinking these are herbal products,
Right.
and they're just bunk. It's a non-FDA regulated field, so you have to be very mindful of where we're buying our supplements from. And if it's too good to be true, $9.99 for 1,000 fish oils is probably garbage.
It's probably garbage.
That's right. I forgot the question you asked before that, though. We kind of diverged into fish oils and the integrative stuff. So in terms of integrative medicine, we want to integrate the biology, the psychology, the social, and the spiritual.
The holistic,
The whole
the
being,
functional,
the whole person.
the whole thing.
The whole person.
Right.
Because biology alone ain't working so well.
Exactly.
Right?
So what are the different things so those medicines and
Isn't working so well. I'm playing. Anyways, go ahead.
Oh, that went over my head.
Oh, gotcha.
Maybe I need more coffee
Uh,
to raise my dopamine levels. Jeez.
So integrative, yes.
Yeah, integrative. So essential oils, all sorts of
Absolute aromatherapy,
aromatherapy.
absolute massage, acupuncture. I'm certified. I do auricular acupuncture. It's really cool. Come in sometime.
All right.
We'll give you some needles.
Where's your office?
Down in Lakewood.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I never. Can you imagine? Lakewood's been very good to me, and New Jersey's been very good to me. But to be very candid, when I was in New York, I never thought I was coming to Jersey. You know how people kind of view from New York, Jersey. But
I'm a Jersey boy.
Yes, you're a Jersey boy, but again, I think you know what I'm saying. The mindset of.
Oh, I do.
But no, it's been a wonderful experience in terms of it's provided really everything in terms of the last 10 years of growth and experience, and really it has given me a great opportunity to work on this problem. We're really in the epicenter. New Jersey is one of the top 5 states in terms of this overdose deaths. We're going to have about 3,000 this year in this state alone.
Is New Jersey's in the top 5, but is it just an epidemic pretty much all over? Is there any state in the country that is doing really well with not having an
You're going to
addiction?
find pockets where it's not a problem, but in general, remember, a lot of America is rural. These kids are bored. They're all looking at these social media feeds and how everybody else is having a great old time. This is part of the issue.
The rural areas where they are looking at social media and they have less to do.
They got nothing to do other than they're playing with their Xbox, right? They're coming home now, and the kids, hey.
What about sports? What about being out there in Iowa and
I love that.
playing football and.
But how many kids do that, right? No, so this is what you're saying is we have to get them involved in other things, which requires what? Parents, presence. Again, you see, it goes back to that.
It's balance. It's hard.
Oh my God.
See,
it's terribly hard.
That's the thing. It is hard to have that balance.
Yes.
To like not be running around, especially where we live.
That's right.
In the Jersey/New York.
Yes.
It's being at the dinner table. For me, I'm telling you, I am big at being at the dinner table. Or anywhere and just being in the moment. And understanding what's going on with my kids.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, I'll be honest, we are running around like crazy.
I hear you.
Like crazy. And I'm constantly trying to figure out, I'm look at the schedule, I'm like, where does this end? Like, what do we cut out? I'm like, oh, we can't cut out soccer because my son loves soccer. You know, my daughter loves piano, so she's got to go to piano. She loves tennis. She plays tennis. But then I have 3 kids, and there's me and my wife.
That's right.
And we don't have a ton of help, quite frankly. So it's divide and conquer.
Right.
But then by the time you know it, the day's over. You've been running around like a crazy person.
Right.
And your attachment, the actual quality or mindfulness, was it really there for your kids?
Exactly. So ultimately, see, we think we're doing good in keeping them involved in all these things.
It's hard.
Right? So you have one scenario where the parents really are not doing that, right? Then you have another scenario where the parents are putting in a lot of effort, but you're almost like pulling your hair out doing it, right? So the idea is, where does this balance come in? But I will tell you, hands down, in my opinion, those 5 to 7 dinners are probably more important than any extracurricular activity we could possibly do for them.
I think I totally agree with you.
Right? That's what's going to drive and stay with them. Oh, we used to have dinner with my parents regularly when
Yes.
when I was growing up.
I think it's a huge deal.
You know, so again, it goes back to presence. It goes back to presence. Now, again, we are in the midst of a very changing time. You know, medical marijuana, I'm pretty sure, is going to be on this ballot coming up for recreational use. I'm sorry, not medical marijuana, just marijuana in general.
Recreational, yeah.
Yeah, but recreational is going to be on the ballot.
Yeah.
You know, and a majority of the people, I think it's like 60%.
What do you think of that?
I am pro-medicinal marijuana. I am actually not supportive of straight legalization. And I'll tell you why. It's the same problem I'm telling you with the opiates. We are already in a anesthetizing society. Right? Now, what do you do when you find your 14-year-old has weed? How are you going to manage it? Because I'll tell you, once your brain feels it, and
I'd probably take it away, and then when he goes to bed, I'd smoke it.
Right now, for those actually, I will tell you, anybody who's listening,
I had a really rough day.
Listen,
hey, what do you do with this stuff?
Yeah, for anybody who's listening, you know, that really feels, oh, you know what, I use it for my anxiety, I use it for, you know, and for my insomnia, what have you. Go get a medical card then. Take the illegality out of it.
Yeah.
It's available medically. It's simply you go to a doctor.
Yeah.
And if you're appropriate and you meet criteria, you get a medical card. And you know what you're buying now at the dispensary. It's not just what your friend got you from a friend who got it from somebody else.
Yes, and I think I agree with you. I think that's a very good thing.
Right?
And you can't just go into these dispensaries and just buy loads of it. There are
limits.
Yeah, there's limits.
Even though I think the limits are too high. I think it's like a little bit nuts. I mean, if I'm correct just off the top of my head, it's something like, I forget, like 2 ounces a month or 4 ounces a month. I'm like, who's smoking 4 ounces of blunt a month? I don't know.
That's too much?
Oh my God. An ounce is like a decent amount of weed.
Should I give some back to the dispensary?
Right?
I got too much there?
The reality, well, listen, that to me, that's suspicious. They're probably sharing it and selling it and giving it to their buddies, you know, if they're buying that much.
Yeah.
But we need some regulation on it. But straight legalization, now remember, what do we do best in the United States? We are capitalists, right? Big tobacco is ready for this, big time. You think all these little shops are the ones that are interested? They're the small guys and gals. The big companies are all lining up. Do you know Coca-Cola I hope I'm correct on this.
I know Coca-Cola.
I've
Real well.
heard a rumor, so this is not a fact, let me state that. But I've heard a rumor that they're preparing to put THC in the Coca-Cola drinks. Soon as it goes straight legal, you see.
Sure.
Because this is what happens.
Well, the CBD oil is already in waters.
It's in the stores.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can buy that now.
Yeah.
But my point is, so this becomes now seen as, oh, it's okay.
Because Coca-Cola's doing it.
Alcohol has been one of the most devastating things for our society. Now, it's been around for thousands of years, right? And before 1931, I believe it was 31, and before Prohibition,
Sure.
You'd have to walk down an alley, knock on somebody's door,
Yeah.
and say, yeah, can I get a jug of rum? Right? That's the way, they were dealers. People talk about gateway, right? People talk about gateway drugs. I tell you, the best explanation of this I've heard is the following. Back in the day, I think, again, going back to the times of Prohibition, right? So when that person went to go buy that rum, they'd come on in. They'd walk in, and there was a poker table. There were prostitutes. These are horses that run together. I don't know if one causes the other, but the association is what we're talking about. So you go to your dealer.
Prostitutes and horses?
No, prostitutes.
Where did you
and
go?
Gambling.
Where were you that you saw prostitutes and horses?
No.
Were the prostitutes on the horses? Was this a racetrack?
No, you're joking.
Where were you?
I'm talking about in times of Prohibition.
I was fading. I'm sorry. I'm not in the. I'm not in the moment. I got to get back into the
That's
moment.
okay. That's okay. I'm talking about in the times of Prohibition.
Yeah.
Did alcohol cause gambling? Did alcohol cause people to go to prostitutes? No, these are horses that ran together. That's my point. So you went to go get one thing, and the other things were there.
Were the prostitutes on the horses drinking at the same time?
No, I'm talking about the idea of one causing the other. This idea of gateway.
Did they have 2 drinks in both hands?
I don't know.
Not holding onto the horse?
I'm not sure how. But my point being is when somebody goes to buy weed illegally, right?
Yes.
Their dealer may say, hey, man, I got some Coke. You want some Coke? Hey, man, I got some pills.
Yeah, it goes together.
Right? These things run together. So there's pros and cons, and this is the challenge of it all. There's not one right answer. I can give you positives and I can give you negatives. But I think recreational use for the youth is going to be a challenging problem for our country. Let me just state that.
I agree with you. I think the biggest challenge, and you hit upon it, and it may sound, to me it makes sense, is being with your kids and giving them that attention. I agree with you, because as you're telling me these things, I'm thinking about certain things that went on with myself, and it makes sense. And I'm into this. I'm into the holistic lifestyle, so I don't look at just my exercise and the amount of kale I ate during the day and water.
Yes.
I look at mind, body, and spirit.
Yes.
So I am always evaluating, probably even too much. I'm always tapping into myself and, John, why did you do this and why did you do this? And then I think about it and then I write it down, because there's like expressive writing and negative writing. That's a whole nother ball game where you get it out of your head. But I think spending the time with your kids and keeping them close, as hard as that may be, is a huge deal. So this podcast has been awesome, but also I think for the people that are listening, if you can find some balance, even if it's in the car.
Yes.
Right? So let's just say you're not having dinner, you can't be home, and the husband comes home late. Maybe you're in the car together for 15 minutes.
That's right. Or maybe you do FaceTime at the office with your kids.
Yes.
Right?
Put down the electronics, or, even in the car, just put down the electronics. Let's just talk. No radio. Let's just
you're talking when the kids are in the car.
Yeah.
That's right. Instead of saying, hey, Dad, can I get your phone? No, you can't have my phone, honey. Not in the car.
I'm just trying to think of different ways
to be more present.
To be more present.
That's right.
So if you can't, because look, some people can actually sit there at the dinner table, some people can't. So
yes.
The car, FaceTime, less distractions. What's going on?
There's one key thing I want to make sure we talk about, we get to. And it's really to help understand people and the mind of each one of us, right? Going back to the lottery ball. I was going to go back to that, right?
Yeah.
So this is what really, it's a silly kind of analogy, but it really works, right? Everybody's seen the lottery ball drawing. All the white balls inside, right? Think of these as different parts of us. Part of me feels this way.
Well, I have white balls that are a part of me, but
Part of me feels that way.
You're Indian.
I'm brown.
So
that's
you
right.
have brown balls.
That's right. Part of me feels this way. Part of me feels that way. Even in relationships, right? Part of me feels like staying. Part of me feels like going. Conflicting pieces of us, right? Think of the globe as the environment. We're talking nature and nurture before, right?
Yep.
Think of the globe as the environment. So when I go to my parents' house, I tell you, I get a certain level of rest I don't get anywhere else in the world. There's something happens when I enter into my parents' house. I can go and all of a sudden I can just go to sleep for 10 hours. Can't do that I just have never been able to replicate that anywhere else.
Your mind and body, you're at ease.
The environment is different.
Yeah.
Different parts of us are being interacted with. Okay? Out of all of that, right, there's one experience coming out of that. So when somebody says, I feel upset, it's a very complicated statement. I feel angry. I feel sad. It's not a one unidimensional scenario. Now, I'm going to add 2 layers of complexity to that, which I think are critical also to understand. Each one of these, actually we call them self-states. Each one of these self-states has a timestamp. 5-year-old, 7-year-olds in it, 9-year-olds in us, 12-year-olds in us. Talking about the blueprint, going back to that. All of these different age representations still live in us. So if I start acting like
self states.
Different self states.
Okay.
So if I start acting like a child, if my wife says, honey, that's really that was childish what you just did. It probably came from a younger self state.
But you're pretty mature.
It doesn't happen all that often, but it happens.
I'm a 5-year-old. So basically what you're telling me, because listen to me, basically what you're telling me is my self-state is my 5-year-old self-state.
No, but you can access, how old are you now?
44.
But you can access 44 if you have to.
Okay.
And you can access 42 if you have to. But if you automatically go back to the younger self-states a lot, it becomes a difficult relationship to be with.
Give me another example.
Narcissism. Right? People that are selfish or self-oriented, right? I remember being a kid, and I'd say, nope, I want 2 sodas before I have the first. We've all seen this with our kids.
Sure.
It's irrational. It's irrational, right?
Yeah.
But it's more self-oriented. So remember, there's self and there's other. Now, it's good. The goal is the needle has to be able to move between the two. Sometimes I can think of myself and my needs, but sometimes I say, what's important to you? I'm going to let go of what I need in this moment. I'm going to focus on my wife's needs or my child's needs because that's also important to me. I'm not going to go do the XYZ, or I'm not going to go work out Saturday morning because my son asked me to work on something with him. I'm going to rearrange my schedule, even though I may not really want to all the way. You see what I'm saying? So we have to be able to switch the self and other, or between the two. Now, people who get stuck on the self, that's a problem. These are people who seem to be selfish or narcissistic. They say, oh, she's so narcissistic, he's so narcissistic. What they're saying is, you only think about yourself.
Does that stem from childhood?
It is all stems from childhood.
All of it.
If see, where does narcissism ultimately, comes from the story of Narcissus, from Greek mythology. In essence, there were no mirrors then, and he was so in the pond, his reflection. He was so fascinated with himself.
Right.
Eventually, he falls in and drowns and dies. He tries to reach it. He's so focused only on himself.
Is that the story of narcissism?
Yeah, that's the basis of that word.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this idea that if we are not able to think of the other, in the psychological world, it's called mentalization. Can I mentalize cognitively what Jon may be thinking or needing right now? Can I mentalize what my son may be feeling right now and thinking? So going back to that, very important. Honey, tell me, what are you thinking? Why do you think that? Rather than saying, don't do that and stop it. No, I want to. Stop it. You get into this. Rather than, okay, let's slow down. Help me understand. Now we're going to presence again. Help me understand why.